Good evening, Torah lovers. And those of you online and those of you on Zoom, we're going to have a good night tonight. And how many of you have notes? That you got notes that you brought with you? I have one left if anybody needs it. Does anybody need notes? You guys want notes? We'll just hand them back. There you go. If you have your notes and you have something to write with, there's a little error on your notes. Okay? And that is under Hebrew, that second letter, all of the words that begin with C-H-E-T, that whole line there, well, really, it's only the C-H-E-T. You need to cross that out. That is wrong. I didn't remove it from last week's, and it's my error. So, no, just C-H-E-T. That isn't a hate. That was last week that we looked at the letter hate. So we're going to look at new letters in a minute, okay? As we look at CHAYEI, Sarah. CHAYEI, Sarah. That is a really hard letter. That letter right there. CHAYEI. And you need to be... No. Hold on. We'll go there on the board. Okay, so we're going to begin with prayer. Let's do that. Father, we need your help in life in general, in every way. And we know that you are God. You are Elohim. You are the Almighty, and you are on your throne. And we ask on earth that it would be more and more as in heaven. And we ask that there would be an end to the madness, and that there would be no madness in our hearts and in our minds. Because we live in your world, your kingdom. And we give you glory and honor tonight and ask that we learn together. Amen. Amen. All right. 2 letters, Hebrew letters that we're going to learn tonight. 2 more. And that means you're going to have the whole alphabet memorized in a couple months. Okay? Yeah. By the way, you guys, yeah, there will be. There's going to be an exam, and no, there isn't, but reading Hebrew will be your exam. I want you guys to know that you can be anywhere in the room that you want. Okay, in other words, you don't have to all sit where you are. You can move. We're very open that way. So here's the letters. This is the letter Tate. Okay, it looks almost like a heart, doesn't it? And I make it with one motion, like that. Okay, it's pronounced T. Okay, it's a T, basically. And it isn't the only letter that makes the T in Hebrew. There's another one, which is the last letter of the alphabet, and we'll learn that when we get there. All right, but this is the letter Tate. In the ancient language, it looks about like this. And what that is a basket. Okay? The meaning of the letter, if you want to go into the meaning of it, is it revolves around the idea of a basket. And what does a basket do? A basket surrounds, okay, or holds. Things like that. Okay? So that is that letter. The next letter is the easiest letter in Hebrew. It's the letter Yod. There it is. Okay? The Yod is like an apostrophe in English. It's a little mark, all right? And it goes up at the top of the line. You'll see that in a minute when we make a word using these letters, Tate and Yod. In the ancient language, or the ancient picture language, it looks something like this. Okay, and you can do it facing either way. And what that is, or represents, is the arm of a man that is doing this. It's laying down something. It has something in the arm and it's laying down, okay? And the meaning of the letter is work or hand or lay down, as in laying something down, not as in lying down. Okay? Now, there is a word that has these letters in it. So we're going to look at that word. We're going to learn that word. And it's a tate. We're going to go right to left. And a yod. And another tate. Okay? And the yod, by the way, I didn't tell you this. The yod either makes a y, like a y, yod, or it is a letter that might be used as a vowel. Okay, it's there's a couple letters like that which might be a vowel, and in this word, it's a vowel. Okay, and the word is teat. Okay, and what does it mean? And look at this. So you have, in the ancient language, you'd have a basket. A basket. And then you have the arm laying down, and then you'd have another basket. Okay? And you know what it means? It means mud. Mud. M-U-D. Mud. Like you take your hand and you make mud out of it and you stick it in a basket. Okay? Mud. Teat is the word that means mud. Now, it might mean clay. Okay? 'Cause in Hebrew, it isn't always direct. Here's a Hebrew word. Here's the English word. You'll have a Hebrew word that'll mean 5 different English words. Okay? Yes, yod. Y-O-D. Yod. Okay, so this is T-E-T, and this is Y-O-D. Yod. Sometimes you'll hear it yud. Yud, yod. Tomato, orange. Tomato. Okay, we're going to do questions at the end. The what? That must be something that happened in your notes when you printed them out. Okay, if this might be what happened, if you don't have your font in your Word program, then you might be getting letters that don't look like the letters that I'm making. I bet you that is what is going on. So if, at the end, I will let everybody know, I'll let you know where to go to get the alphabet, the ancient alphabet, and it'll go into your Word as one of your fonts, and it's free. So I'll do that. Thanks for bringing that up, okay? I got more on the Zoom. All right, now we're ready to go with Torah. We're going to learn about the life of Sarah. At least that is the name of this, CHAYEI, Sarah. And believe it or not, it begins with her death. So the life of Sarah begins with her death. And that means that the reason these are named, they're not named because they're all about what you're going to learn about. They're only named as a marker of where you're going in the Bible, where you're going in the Torah. So when you read CHAYEI Sarah, life of Sarah, you're really reading Genesis 23. Okay? So that's how it works. And we're going to begin there. And what we begin with is learning Sarah's life was 127 years. The years of Sarah's life. Now, you can make a lot about that, and rabbis make a lot about that. One of the things that they make about that is the number, because you remember numbers mean something in Hebrew. Okay, so what would the number 120 mean? Have you already heard that number in Genesis? Yes, with Noah, right? When Yehovah said your years are going to be 120 years. So rabbis would look at this and go, well, that means that Sarah lived beyond the limit. In other words, it was a good life. She got to live longer than that, okay? And the next number, it's 120 plus 7. We already know that number has great meaning in Hebrew, right? Okay, that is like God's holy number. So it's like a mark almost that this is a good woman. She's a righteous woman. If there were a woman, and we could use the word Zedek, which in Zedek, Tzaddik is a righteous man, okay? Zadiket is a righteous woman. And she would be a righteous woman. Okay, every Shabbat evening in Jewish homes where a father is praying over his daughter or daughters, one of the lines that you will hear is, "May God make you like Sarah and Rebekah and Leah and Rachel." Okay, those are known as the 4 mothers of Israel. Just as we have Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, as well, you have Sarah, Rebekah, Leah, and Rachel. Okay, why is there 4 women but only 3 men? Well, we haven't got there yet, but you remember what happened with Jacob. Jacob married Leah and then Rachel. And then the maids were mothers as well. But the maids aren't in the list. Interesting, but in the list here of being the mothers of Israel. Okay? Now, there's a little Jewish Midrash, and you remember a Midrash. I don't think we know yet exactly what that means, Midrash. We'll learn more about it Friday night when we look at Matthew, okay? But a Midrash is a way of looking at a Bible verse or whole section that when they make an interpreting of it, you look at it and you go, how do you get that out of there? Okay, that's the way the Midrash works. Okay, it's a very Hebrew way of doing things. And the more you learn about what it is and how it works, the more you'll be able to read the letters of Paul without going, what in the world are you doing? Because I don't know what you mean, and over here you wrote this, but over there you wrote that. He's doing a Midrash. A Midrash doesn't need to be logical. Okay, that's the bottom line. So here's a Midrash, a Jewish Midrash about Abraham and Sarah. Abraham's wife honored him and called him Lord. For it is written that Sarah said, my Lord is old. Now, do you remember when those words were spoken? It was when, when the angel said, you're going to have a baby, and she was like, but my Lord is old. Okay, so that's when those words. Now, what you're going to hear here has nothing to do with what happened when she uttered those words, my Lord is old. It's a Midrash. Okay, so here it is. My Lord is old, but conversely, God commanded Abraham to honor his wife by calling her princess, for that is the meaning of her name. There you go. Now you know a little bit about how a Midrash works. We'll learn more about that Friday night. Okay. In Proverbs, you read, whoever finds a wife finds good and receives favor from Adonai. Okay? And you know that it was that way with Abraham, like it is with a lot of us. And at the end of Proverbs, there is a poem about a good wife, right? Except it isn't literally a good wife, it's a good woman. Okay? Have you ever heard that? It begins with something like, a good wife who can find. Now, men that are married, don't say that to your wife. Don't just look at her and say, a good wife who can find. All right? You gotta make the words a little bit different. Okay, literally, it's a good or accomplished woman. Okay? Because the word wife and woman in Hebrew are one word. Same word. Okay? And then her value is far beyond rubies. And you know, if you go in Proverbs and you read all of that, you read about this woman, this wife, and all that she does. Well, in Hebrew, this good woman has a name in Hebrew. And the name, by the way, of the poem at the end of Proverbs is Eshet Hayil. Eshet Hayil. Hayil. Okay? And it might mean a woman of honor, but there's a whole lot more going on in that word. So we'll look at that in a minute. So what do you remember about Sarah from what we read? She's the wife of Abraham. She's related to Abraham, remotely, but there's a relation there. They were married many years. Sarah left Ur with Abraham and his dad and Lot and the brother, and they left there together. Okay? So she'd been with him many, many years. And what happened when, as a not young woman, they went to Egypt? Okay? Pharaoh noticed her, didn't he? And then later, Abimelech noticed her, brought her into his harem, if you will, okay? So there was something about Sarah, but it wasn't only her looks, okay? It was that she was an Eshet Hayil, all right? Now, what does that mean? Okay, the word Eshet, E-S-H-E-T, is a word that means woman from the word. Anybody remember what the Hebrew word woman is in Genesis 2? Isha. Okay? Eshet is a form of that word. So it just means woman. But it's the next word that brings this depth. The word Hayil, which means strength or army or valor. Okay? In the ancient language, you have a hate and a yod and a lamed. A hate is a fence or a wall or a division. Okay? The yod is that arm that is going down, that means arm or strength or work or something like that. That's a man's arm going down. And the lamed, which is a staff, that means leader or authority. So all of that is in her name, okay, of the name of Hayil, that word, Hayil. So we have the ideas of strength and authority and fence. What do you do with fence? Yeah, you keep out the bad guys, all right? So that's the idea. Now, this word is used in other scriptures. For example, Joshua 1 uses it this way. But you will cross over before your brothers armed. All the mighty men of Hayil, the mighty men of valor, okay, will help them. In Psalm 59, you read this, this is speaking to God, with your Hayil, with your power, shake them and bring them down, O Lord, our shield. And then it's used in Psalm 108, with God we will do Hayil, we will do valiantly, and he will trample our foes. So the idea is this Eshet Hayil that's in the book of Proverbs that you read about, and that Sarah was one of, all right, is not a woman who's a wimp. Okay? This is a woman of strength. This is a woman who's a leader. This is not a only bow down. This is where you get the Midrash. The Midrash is, yes, she looked at her husband and said, my Lord. In other words, I'm honoring him. Okay? However, in the Midrash, Abraham honored her. So there's a mutual honoring that is going on there. Why? Because they're both strong. You don't want one strong and one weak. You don't want both weak. You want both strong. Okay? And that, by the way, is the way marriage is meant to be. Which means inevitably you might have debates. If you've been married longer than a day. It's all good. All good. All right, now, we already looked at the number of her years. So let's go on down and let's look at her death. Okay? Sarah died in Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. Abraham came to mourn for her, and he wept over her. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but why wasn't Abraham already there? Where was Abraham? Abraham, remember, Isaac and Abraham on the mountain. Okay, Isaac was going to be offered up. At the end of it, Abraham comes down the mountain, but we don't hear anything about Isaac. This is the next chapter. At the end of the last chapter, we read, Abraham took up residence in Beersheba. And now he's going to Kiriath Arba, where Sarah lives. Maybe because he heard that she died. Somebody sent a runner or whatever. The bottom line is that they weren't living together at her death. What was up with that? What is going on here? Okay, well, as I alluded a little bit to last week, and there are many rabbis who agree that they were not living together, and the reason that they weren't living together was because of Isaac. Because when Abraham went and did that, it was like he didn't go home. This was a big deal. So now he goes and he's mourning. Okay, he loves her. It doesn't mean they didn't love one another. So he's mourning her. And how long did they mourn? Well, chances are they mourned 7 days. And in Hebrew, this is known as sitting Shiva. The word Shiva means 7. So what they do is they literally mourn a week. Okay? And at the end of the week, they get up and they're done. Now, when they mourn, they mourn. We don't do that much. We mourn a little bit when somebody that we love dies, a little bit, and then we suck it up and go about our life, and then it begins to hit us in waves. Anybody ever have that happen? You know what I mean? So you're mourning and you're in grief. Everybody goes, yeah, you're grieving. It's normal. Sometimes people grieve years. Okay? What is going on here? What is meant by this 7 days is you grieve and get it all out, and then you're done. Okay, it's a very good way, really, if you think about it. So we read, then Abraham rose from before his dead, and then he begins doing something else. He goes on about his life, right? His business. So now, what is he going to do? He's beginning to speak to the sons of Het. Okay? He says this, I am an outsider and a sojourner among you. Give me a grave site among you, that I may bury my dead from before my presence. So Abraham doesn't own any land yet. All right? He's in the land that God gave him to go, but he doesn't own anything yet. He's hanging out in the land, living in tents, right? Okay? And now he needs to bury his wife, his loved ones. So he goes to those who were real near where they all were there in the land, and he asks for somewhere to bury his wife. Okay? Now, there's a guy there who meets him. His name is Ephron, and he's a Hittite. We're going to meet them later. Okay, the Hittites we'll meet later. And he asks about buying this cave that is known as the Cave of Machpila. So he asks that he may give me this cave that belongs to him, that's at the end of his field. And I want to give full price in your midst for a grave site. Now, this is going on in front of more than just Abraham and Ephron. They're all together at the gate of where they were, the gate of the city. So there's a whole bunch of people that are there. So when Abraham brings this up, it isn't like, me and you over here in the dark saying, hey, I'll make a deal with you. This is like, I want to buy a grave site. And Ephron, who I guess owns the Cave of Machpila and the field where it is, he begins to barter with Abraham right there in front of everybody else, which matters a lot. Okay? Now, by the way, Abraham is going to buy this field and the cave, and it's going to be a very significant place in the Bible. Even today, next to the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem, the Cave of Machpila is the most holy site in Judaism. Okay? So it's very meaningful. Now, Abram hears Ephron because Ephron makes a statement. Okay? Do you remember what it was? It's, Abraham's like, well, what is it worth? What do you want? Okay? And Ephron is like, well, I'll just give it to you. And Abram's like, no. I want to buy it. I want to know what is it worth. I'll buy it. And then Ephron is like, well, what is 400 shekels between you and me? If it were worth anything, it'd be worth something like that. Which, by the way, is a very large amount of money in that day. It has been figured that it would be about 700 grand today. So you want to buy this field, this lot that has a cave in it where you could bury some people. And the guy goes, 700,000. Okay, what is that between you and me? All right. Now, the reason that Ephron wanted to give Abram the land is if I give it to you, then there's not going to be any agreement or anything that's going to be written down, which means either next week or a generation from now, I can go back and go, yeah, you guys need to get out. You need to get the bones out, get out. This is mine, okay? And Abraham was like, no, it isn't going to work that way, okay? And the fact that Abraham brought it up in the midst of all of these others, because the guy was like, 400 shekels. What is that? And Abraham takes his wallet. And I imagine everyone was like, dang, I didn't expect you to really buy it for that much. But he already gave the amount in front of everybody. So Abraham's like, here's your money. And now Abraham owns the land. All right, this is the beginning of being given the land. Okay? And it will forever be owned by Abraham. Okay? Because it's never been undone. So if you ever hear anybody say something like, well, you guys don't own that land belongs to, say, nope, Abraham bought it. Okay? He bought it for 700 grand or whatever. Okay? Now, Abraham bought it, not only the cave, but all of the area that around it. And today, it is in modern day Hebron. Has anybody ever been there? Ever been to Israel and Hebron? Is it there available? Can you go there? Can you get into Hebron? Oh, you did? Okay. Very nice. Oh. Uh-huh. It seems like it would be north, but I don't know. I'll have to look at where it is. I didn't look on the map. All right, let's move on. So now, how many of you guys read it? You read the whole portion already, okay? Did you notice how long this marriage story is with finding a bride for Isaac? Did you notice how long it is? And it's like it goes on and on and on and on. Well, think about it like this. The longest narrative in Genesis is about a bride, finding a bride. Okay, so you ought to learn something from that. The longest narrative in Genesis is all about a bride and a marriage. Okay, so here's what happens. Genesis 24. Then Abraham said to his servant, the oldest of his household, who had managed everything that belonged to him. Okay, stop right there. When Abraham left when they left and then they went into Haran, when he left Haran to go down into the land, this guy was already with him. because he went down with his riches and his servants, okay? And they weren't like, shine my shoes or whatever. These were like people who were employed as administrators. Okay, so he says to him, put your hand under my thigh. So that I may make you take an oath by Adonai, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you will not take a wife for my son, and that would be Isaac, from among the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I am dwelling. On the contrary, I want you to go to my land and to my relatives in order to get a wife for Isaac. Okay? Now, the name of this oldest and probably number one administrator in Abraham's life was Eliezer. Eliezer. Okay, if you heard that. Now, the word is El and Ezer. It's El and Ezer. Join them together, you have Eliezer. Okay? Do you remember when we looked at the word Ezer all the way back Genesis for what the woman was going to be to the man? Okay, it's an Ezer. There's the word. And it means a mighty, strong helper. Okay? So this servant was not one who, when he went with a lot of riches to go find a wife. He had a lot of riches. He had a lot of bling with him. Okay? He had more than one camel, you noticed. Probably an entourage. Okay? Traveling north in order to get a wife for Isaac. Okay? Now, last week, we looked at how Isaac gave us, and the whole, the binding of Isaac gave us this beautiful picture of Yeshua and what he was going to do. Okay? So there's no way that Abraham, who already knows about all of the ites that live around him, okay, there's no way that he's going to let his son marry into those locals. Why? What were they known for? Idols. They were idol worshipers. That's the whole reason they left Ur, right? Was due to the idol worship. So now here he is in a land of idol worshipers, and he looks at his administrator, whose name means El, my help. Okay, El is the word for Elohim. God is my help. So he looks at God as my help and does his hand, says, put your hand under my thigh. Now, if you read your notes, you know what that means. Okay? It just is what it is. I could just, not even explore it, but I think it's neat to know that in that day, when men made oaths, they grabbed the other man under here, if you get my drift, okay? You can read about it in the notes, and then I don't have to say it out loud. But what was amazing is this: I learned that the English word testify is from the Latin word where we get the word testicle. And the reason is going back to this ancient oath practice of, you're going to swear to me. So, now you know. Okay, so whenever you read that in the Bible now and your grandchild goes, what does that mean? You do with it what you think is right. Well, that's the way they swore oaths in that day. You'll learn more about that later. Okay, so now the servant says to Abraham, well, suppose the woman were unwilling to follow me to this land. It's a long way. We're not, this is not like 10 miles up the road. This is like days of a journey. And then he asks, should I then have your son go back to the land where in other words, should I get Isaac and bring Isaac with me? Then Isaac can pick out his own wife. Okay? And Abraham says to him, no, do not bring Isaac back there. In other words, Isaac is not going to leave the Holy Land. Isaac is not to leave this land, okay? The bride must come to Isaac, okay? Now, that means something. To me, at least, it means something. That Isaac is not to leave Israel, but his bride must come to Israel. And isn't that the way it is with us? We are grafted in, we read in Romans, to the vine, and that vine is Israel. Okay? It's the olive tree that we're grafted into. We don't make Israel come to us, we go to Israel. In other words, we don't look at the olive tree and go, well, you know what? We're Gentiles, and this is the way we believe, and this is the way we act, and maybe you guys all need to be like us. Now, isn't that what they did in the 300s with the founding of the religion of Christianity? That's exactly what they did. Okay, rather than the bride coming to Israel, Israel was, let me see, how can I say it? They wanted anyone who was a Jew, who was a believing Jew. They wanted them to give up their Judaism. Okay, they wanted them to give up their heritage and their background and all of that. And that isn't the way that it works. It ought to work the other way around. Okay, and where in the religion of Christianity we have made Yeshua into this Roman god almost, named Jesus. And now that's the one that everybody knows. Okay? So when people begin to learn, well, wait a minute, he isn't what you believe he is what you read about in the Word, and the more you read about him, the more you realize, wait a minute, he's Jewish. He's not only Israel, but he's Jewish. Maybe that'd be good if I learned. That doesn't mean I need to be Jewish, but at least maybe I want to learn about what that means. And maybe there's things that they have done that we can look at and we can go, you know what? That's a good idea. And especially if it's in Torah. So we'll learn more about that on Friday nights with Matthew. Okay? Okay, so Abraham's administrator goes in order to find a wife, a bride, for Isaac, and he goes to the land where Abraham's relatives are. And when he arrives in that land, he's drawing near to a well. Okay? Now, this is going to be, there's a well that Abraham looked at, but this is going to be one of those themes that happens over and over again in the Bible that has to do with meeting a woman at a well. Okay? And the women would go out in the afternoon and they would get water at the well, okay? So anyway, here's what Eliezer prays when he arrives in that land. Adonai, the God of Abraham, my master. Okay? Please make something happen today. I have been praying that every day for the last couple of weeks. Make something happen today, right? Okay, so he does this, and he asks, and he says, show loyalty to Abraham, my master. By the way, that word loyalty in English, in Hebrew, is the word hesed. Hesed. It's one of the most amazing and important words in the Bible. And we're going to learn more about that when we get to Exodus, and we have God revealing who he is through his name to Moses, and he uses that word. Okay? So it's amazing that this servant uses that word. Okay? Some of your Bibles, it may have love. It may have the word love. But love is not a good enough word. Loyalty is a better word. Okay? Show your loyalty to Abraham. Look, I am standing by the spring of water. The daughters of the men of the city are going out to draw water. Now, let it be that the young woman to whom I say, please tip your jar that I may have a drink. And she will say, drink, and I'll water your camels as well. Let her be the one that you have appointed for your servant Isaac. So by this I'll know that you have shown graciousness to my master. Well, that's a lot of words. That's a lot of detail. But there's a reason behind what he's asking. Okay? This is the first prayer like this, where someone is asking God to do something in the Bible. Okay? You have Abraham prays that Abimelech is healed. That's the first prayer written in the Bible. But this is the one where we're asking something. We're making a petition, if you will, to God. Okay? And what's amazing is, what is it that the servant wants to be the main criterion of this woman? Does he ask that she's beautiful? No. Does he ask that she's rich? No. What does he ask? Kindness. And kindness to strangers, which is all throughout Torah, that we are commanded to be good and gracious to Egypt, if you will. Okay? So, he had not even finished his words when here's a woman. Comes a woman. I love it when God answers and we're not even done praying yet. That's a good day right there, right? So he's not even done speaking, and here's Rebecca, a young woman, a virgin, coming out with her water jug to get water from the well. So he asks for a drink, and sure enough, her words are, drink, my Lord, and I will also water your camels until they have drunk. And when you read it, the words are, she ran to the well to get water for all 10 of his camels. That's just a picture right there. She's running to get the water. She's running to bring it back. She's running. Here you go. Is there anything else? Okay. This is a big deal. That would be about 150 gallons of water. And running to do all this, okay? And I wrote how many of us run to do God's will without asking any questions at all, because that's what this woman did, Rebecca did, okay? And then the man, he knew. Can you imagine that? You're praying, God, let it be that when this happens, I'll know that this woman is a woman who has a kind heart, because that's what Isaac needs. And there's a woman. And he goes, can I have some water? By the way, that ought to remind you of somebody else at a well asking, can I have some water? Okay, and the woman runs to not only do that, but water the camels as well. And so what does Eliezer do? What does the servant do? Instantly, he bows down and he worships Yehovah. Okay, right then and there. He bows down and he worships. He says, "Blessed be Adonai, the God of my master Abraham, who has not forsaken his loyalty and his truth toward my master. And as for me, Adonai has guided me in the way to the house of my master's brothers." Okay? When Yehovah answers Eliezer's prayer, he immediately gives glory and thanks to God. By the way, thanksgiving in your heart is one of the most amazing ways that you can love God. It really is. I remember when my kids were young, and you would do something and you'd hear, "Thanks, Dad." That'd just be, "Oh, I love that." But if you go and you give them something and they go, "Well, I don't even know if I like that," that doesn't do real well for you as a dad, does it? Okay? Thanksgiving really matters. Paul wrote in Colossians, "Devote yourselves to prayer, keeping alert in it with thanksgiving." He said it more than once. He said it in more than one letter. Give thanks, thanks, thanks. And that's exactly what Eliezer did. Okay? So now, Rebekah brings Abraham's servant into her family, where he meets a man named Laban, or Laban. Okay? He meets Laban. Now, Rebekah had a brother, and his name was Laban. And Laban ran outside to the man at the spring. And as soon as he saw the nose ring and the bracelets on his sister's hands, and when he heard the words of Rebekah, his sister, saying, "Thus the man said to me," then he went to the man. So Laban is very interested in all of this. Laban looks as if he's the one who's running the house. His dad was alive, okay? Rebekah's dad and Laban's dad was alive. He was there, but Laban is the one who's running the deal. Let's put it that way. Notice that when he noticed, it's very specific, he noticed the nose ring and the bracelets. That means two things. One is they want to marry her. Second is they have money. Okay? It's the way it is. So when the servant goes in and he goes over all that happened and he gets to the end of his words, which are even longer than they were when you read them a couple paragraphs ago, right? And you read them again, and then at the end of it, Laban and the family agree this matter is from Yehovah. What are we going to do? Okay, then the servant brought out articles of silver and gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah, and he gave precious gifts to her brothers and to her mothers. So Rebekah's family is like, "Yes, marry the guy." Now Rebekah, if I were Rebekah, I'd be like, "I don't even know what he looks like. Who is this man?" But, they didn't go by that. They didn't go by looks. It wasn't all about what you looked like. Okay? It was a little bit about whether you had money or not. And Abraham was very rich. Okay? But they weren't going to let her go yet. Why? Because they hadn't asked her about it. Okay? So they did. They called Rebekah and they asked, "Will you go with this man?" And her words were, "I will." I've heard a lot of good messages about those words. "Will you go with this man? I will." Dealing with, the bride and us being the bride, and that really being what God asks us, right? Will you go with this man? And he's not going to make you go any more than they were going to make Rebekah get married to Isaac. That wasn't going to happen. They had to ask. And, we wonder about arranged marriages, and because we don't really do them much, although I did a little bit. But in that day, marriages were arranged, okay? And we, being of the West, when we're young, we think that is a horrible idea. But when we're older, we go, that's not a bad idea. Okay? And at least involving family in, hey, this is who I'm thinking about. Okay, what do you guys think about? It's a good way to do it. We have this idea that it was arranged in a way that the woman just had to do it, like in India. I've heard about this happening in India where, I know a guy, he and his wife, and I asked about their getting married, and she was like, I never met him till the wedding day. I didn't know anything about him. I didn't know who he was. I just knew my dad had arranged a marriage, and I was going to go get married. Can you imagine? It was not like that in Israel. Okay? Yes, they were arranged in that the families brought the matchmaker, brought them together, all right? But the woman could always say no, all right? So they asked, and her words were, I will go. So I wrote in the notes a little something about love. And in our world, somebody falls in love, and then they want to get married, and then they go to their parents. Some of them go and say, I got married. Okay? Some of them go and they ask, or at least they let them know, hey, I'm engaged, and this is what is going on. Okay? Now, what that means is the reason that we get married in the West, in our culture, is because we love someone. So we get married because we love. But in the Bible, people got married and then they learned how to love. Isn't that the way it really works? Okay? It really doesn't work very well the other way around, and this is why our words are love is the foundation for marriage. God's words would be no, marriage is the foundation for love. It's the other way around. Okay? Now, since we don't really know what love is, then that's meaningless to a lot of us. Okay, because we think that love is an emotion. Love is a feeling, but it isn't. Not in the Bible, not in Hebrew. Love is an action. Love is what you do. Okay, it's not your words. It's not your feelings. It's based on choice and action. I choose to love you. I mean, those are great words for a husband to a wife. Rather than just, I love you, how about I choose to love you? Okay? So here's something else to think about as we're getting near the end here. Abraham's servant was given the job or the mission of extracting a bride out of a Gentile land and bringing that bride back into the promised land, which is, in essence, the story of the Bible. God is going into a Gentile world and extracting out a bride. Who is the bride? Those who say, I will, and then they do. See, if Rebekah would have gone, yes, I will go with them, but then she would have not gone, then she wouldn't have been the bride. So maybe that means there's a lot of believers that have all the right words, but they're not going, if you get my meaning. Okay? And something else you'll notice, I'm just going to bring it up, that Laban wanted them to hang around there a little longer. Why? I have an idea. I don't know this. I'm just reading it and reading in between the lines a little bit, saying maybe Laban was really enjoying all those gifts. And maybe Laban was thinking, I'll make you hang out here a little bit more. Maybe I'll get a little bit more out of you. Now, we're going to meet Laban. Why would I think that about this guy, Laban? Because we're going to meet him again, aren't we? With Jacob, we're going to meet him again. And look at the way he handles Jacob. Okay, he is a wheeler-dealer, Laban. Okay, now, next, as we draw near the end here, the reading ends with more about Abraham. Okay, so in the next, in 25, verse 1, we read, Now Abraham took another wife. Her name was Keturah. Excuse me. Now, almost every rabbi that I read on this, or that I've heard on this, believes that this is not in chronological order in Abraham's life. In other words, it isn't Abraham had Isaac, okay, and then he went up the mountain, and then Sarah died, and then Abram went to get a bride for Isaac, and then Abram got married again and had a whole bunch more children. Why? Well, he's 140 years old or something. He's getting up there. Okay? So, in other words, what the belief is this wife, this is a statement of, by the way, Abram did have another wife, and the only reason it's in there is trace the lineage of those children, and in the lineage of those children, you have Midian. Now, why does Midian matter in the Bible? Well, they're going to be enemies of Israel, but they're not always enemies of Israel. And Midian, who do you know that was from Midian? Moses, his wife, and Moses, his wife's dad, Jethro, were from the land of Midian. So Midian is going to be in Torah, in the lineage of Abraham. And Israel, when they went out of Egypt, they went into the land of Midian. Okay, as a matter of fact, the mountain of God is in Midian. Mount Horeb, or the one that is in Arabia today. Okay, yeah, Sinai is in Midian. So, now, at the end, we read, Now these are the days of the years of Abraham's life, that he lived 175 years. So he went way over the mark, didn't he? So Abraham breathed his last and died at a good old age, old and satisfied. And then he was gathered to his peoples. Does anybody kind of have a dream that maybe that's the way I'll go? Living at a good old age, old and satisfied. And then he was gathered to his peoples. What does that mean? Gathered to his peoples. It doesn't mean that he was buried where the others were buried. That isn't what that means. Because that word is used when they die, not when they're buried. Okay? So, what that means is that life goes on. Okay? It's the Torah's way of bringing out the reality that life is eternal, and that Abraham is going to go be with his dad and his wife and whoever else. In other words, life goes on. Now, you'll notice as you read the Torah, and you'll even hear this from scholars, Bible scholars, well, in the Torah, it doesn't mention, the afterlife. Yes, it does, with those very words. And those words are not only used for Abraham, they're used for others, okay? And That's the idea there, is that life does go on. Abraham is not just moldering in the grave, okay? He's gathered to his peoples. One last thing. As soon as I take another drink of water. The Torah believes in and gives us the idea of eternal life, but it doesn't dwell on it. Okay? Why? Because life is about what you're doing right now. Life is not about where you're going when you die. Okay? If you are doing what you're meant to be doing right now, and by meant to be doing, I don't mean you're a lawyer or you're a doctor. I mean you're on the road, right? The road of righteousness. You're walking with your God. Okay? You trust in Yeshua. Great. Then trust him with whatever is going to happen when you die. But don't get preoccupied with it. Okay? We have a job to do. We have work. We're busy doing his work, bringing heaven to earth, right? Not living in heaven before we ever get there. Heaven to earth. Okay. I am done. I will take any questions that you have. You're number one, Patricia. Go ahead. You, of course, yes. Okay, so what I heard, and those words are in the Gospels. Okay, Yeshua looked at the religious leaders who were arguing with him like they always did, and he used the words, Abraham saw my day. Okay, yeah, exactly. He used those words. Okay? Absolutely. Yes. 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 Okay, so what she asked was, is this a repeated cycle with Laban? And it is. It's one of those, it happens here and it happens again here. Just like Abraham going into Egypt and lying about his wife, and then Abraham goes to Abimelech and lies about his wife. And you know what? Isaac next week is going to go lie about his wife because he learned it. Oh, here's how we deal with them. Yeah, that happens over and over again. Okay? And you had one more. Uh-huh. God. Uh-huh. Yep. Yep. Yes. Jacob. Jacob been wrestling in the hip. Uh-huh. Same as oh. Hold on a minute. You may be onto something there that never even entered my head. I'll have to go look at that again. So the idea is that, the oath that is given, the swearing, the oath that is given, and the way that it was given is the hand goes under the thigh. Is that what happened with Jacob when he was wrestling with, and I got to go look at it. I need to go look at the words. I need to look at the Hebrew behind it. You know what I mean? Because I don't know, but that's a very interesting idea. Yeah, good. Okay. It's okay. We're early. Yes. Abraham, yes. Yes. No, that's not right. They usually leave them at least 4 days out of the ground, and the reason that they do is they believe that you are able to rise again as long as it doesn't go beyond 3 days. If it goes beyond 3 days, then the belief was your spirit left. Okay, after 3 days, which is why in John, Yeshua waits when Lazarus dies, and his disciples are like, Lazarus died, we need to get over there. And he's like, wait. In other words, wait until his spirit leaves him, and then I'll go raise him. Okay? And, because you can't do that. It's already gone. And so that's the idea. Now, sitting, mourning over her, this was way back in Israel's history. So I believe that they did the days, 7 days, but I don't know about when they stuck the body in the ground. But I don't think it was right away. So does that help? Right. Yes. They embalmed Joseph. Yes. I think that's right. And I don't know how that worked regarding odors and whatnot. I have no idea. But that would be something you could go look up. And then you could tell me. That's interesting. About the bodies in the grave. And I want to help everybody to hear that we were thinking about how long a body was left out of the grave in the ancient world if it was not embalmed, and how does that work? And I don't know. Exactly. But I don't think it was they got to go in the grave right away. They may have been wrapped in something. I would imagine they would be wrapped. But I don't know. Yes, Dana. Spices, yeah. Well, I knew they did that in Yeshua's day, but this is a couple thousand years earlier. So I don't know what the tradition was. Yep. You have another question. Go ahead, and then James. Second what? Whale? That was a joke. Dana wanted to know, for those of you online watching, wondering what in the world goes on here, this is an idea. Dana thinks that looks like a whale. The letter Tet looks like a whale. And you're right. It does. Sideways whale. James. I heard that. I don't know about that, though. Yeah, that there was this idea in maybe some writings of rabbis that this wife, that Abraham took another wife, that it was really Hagar, but they're giving her another name, calling her by another name. And that might be, could be. Yep. Yeah, and it might be either of those. Because here, I'm glad you brought that up. Here's something that I learned, and we all learn, is you read in Hebrews about Sarah and Abraham, and that they're both lauded as honorable and all that, which is why I gave them the word tzaddik as being righteous, okay? But tzaddik doesn't mean flawless, does it? Because if you look at their lives, their real lives, and you read only just a little bit We just have a little bit of a snapshot of their lives. And here you have, let's look at Sarah. Let's not magnify her problems, but at least it's good to know that they're normal human beings like us. I mean, first, she doesn't believe anymore, and she needs to come up with an idea of how to give Abraham a baby. So she gets the Egyptian maiden, Hagar, and has a baby by Hagar. Okay, and Abraham has a baby by Hagar. And then when Isaac is born, even though Sarah didn't believe, remember, God was there, hey, you're going to have a baby. She's like, are you kidding me? My Lord is old, and I ain't no spring chicken either. Right? Okay. And then Hagar has Ishmael, and then she looks at Ishmael with Isaac, and she's like, Abraham, you got to kick that woman out of our house. I'm done with them. And Abraham's like, well, you're the boss. No, do whatever you want to do, dear. And that's exactly what happens. She kicks them out of the house. Okay, so you look at that and you're like, well, she doesn't look like she's a bright, shining, righteous. You got to realize, everybody in the Bible but one, everybody who's ever lived on earth as a human being but one is flawed. Okay, we blow it. Sometimes we blow it royally, which is all the more amazing as you read Torah, and then you read the whole history of Israel. It's amazing that God doesn't just do what Moses wanted to do that one day, which is like, I'm done with them. Kill them all. Yeah, and then there was a time that God was ready to do it, and Moses was like, nope, you don't want to do that. You're going to ruin your name. So the idea that he is very long-nosed. You guys all know what that means? When I use those words that God, Yehovah, has a long, long nose. That's literally the word in Hebrew, that he is slow to anger. Okay, because if you have a long nose, it takes a long while to get the air up in there so you can go, and be angry. So, he's amazing. No, it isn't. It's not word-wise in Hebrew. Yeah, that word long, that really is what is in Galatians, right? All right, so I saw your hand. Didn't Moses meet his wife at a well also? What do you know? You're onto it. Yes. No embalming going on. Yeah. So wait. I'm gonna repeat this for everybody. So when Jesus went to Lazarus, and Lazarus was dead and in the grave, he was ready to get him out of the grave, and his sister said, he smells really bad. Yep. Okay. When Abraham, wait a minute. When Abraham gets to heaven, Sarah is going to be looking at her watch. Yeah. Where were you? That's funny. That is very funny. Dana. Oh, you mean the years that we're going to be alive? So Dana asked, did the 120, does it mean that today, or did the years go down? I don't know. I like to think of it as it is the goal. That's my goal. My goal is 120. Well, I'm going to have to keep working until I'm 108. At this rate, we'll just keep going at it. But funny. Okay, yes, you had a question. Abraham was 100. Sarah was 99 or 90? 91. Yep. No, yes, last week, yeah. That was the age given. Yeah. No, she wasn't dead when that happened. 30-something-ish. I don't think I gave that. 90. Say 90. Well, no, Abraham was 100. Abraham was 100. Sarah was 90. Isn't that right? Okay. So she was 90. Sorry. Am I sure? No, I'm not. Look it up. I'm never. This is a lot to remember. My brain has a lot in it. And sometimes it doesn't get... Oh, I think that she was alive, and I think that the whole thing was an ordeal. It was an ordeal in their marriage, in their life, in Isaac's life. I think Skip Moen, have you guys ever heard of him? I mention him now and then. He has a whole book about this, about Isaac and Mom and Abraham and the mountain and all that. I don't remember the name of it right now. But, yeah, Abraham's 100. Oh, no. Okay, no, we're not. That was Dana that did the 120. Okay, remember, when we go back to Noah and those words, I'm giving them 120 years. We went over 3 meanings of that. It might mean you're going to live to be 120 and no longer, in general. Okay? It's a general. It's obviously general because when you look at the years that people live, hardly anybody was exactly at the 120. Moses, I think, was. But that's one. The second one is maybe God was saying, Noah, I'm giving you 120 years to get this ark built and let everybody know who I am. Because I don't want to do this. I will relent if they will turn, which is exactly the way he always is with everything. That was the second thing. And what was the third one? Possibility. The Jubilees, 120 Jubilees to the end of the age, okay, which is about 6,000 years. But then I think the last thing I asked is, it might be all of those. It doesn't have to be one. It could be all of those. Because God is like that. Sometimes when he gives words, okay, we're going to learn about this more on Friday night. He'll give a word like through Isaiah. And you'll look at what happened in Isaiah's day, and you'll go, well, that already happened. And it's, yeah, but it only happened once. It can happen more than once. Okay, it can happen again, and it can happen again. And usually when a word happens once and then it happens again, it's usually greater when it happens again, the second time around. Hebrew thinking is not linear. Okay, things happen kind of over and over again, which is why you're reading these things in the Bible and you're noticing a woman at a well, a woman at a well, a woman at a well. So then you stick them all together and you look at them and you go, what does this mean? And then you're off to the hunt, okay, to figure out what it means. Okay, just a second. Is there anybody on Zoom that wants to ask a question at all? If not, then I am going to have one more hand up. Yes, you in the back. Sir, the woman at the well. Okay, Samaritan woman at the well. Oh. That'd take about an hour at least. The introduction of water? What do you mean, the introduction of water? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. So the woman at the well does have something to do with water, but it has to do with living water. What it really has to do with is the Holy Spirit. But it has to do with a whole lot of other things. It has to do with who are the Samaritans. It has to do with, are the Samaritans going to be allowed to be Israel again? Okay, because they have mixed lineage in them now. It has to do with a whole lot of things, but the bottom line is what it has to do with is Yeshua looking at this woman and letting her know that he has something he can give her that is going to make her righteous, which is living water. Yeah, it's good. Yes, he was the first evangelist in her area. It's good. Okay, you guys, I'm going to let you go and let all you Zoomies go, and let's pray. Blessed are you, Yehovah, our Elohim, King of the universe, who gives us your word and gives us your living word in Yeshua and gives us the water of life in your Holy Spirit living within us. May we walk with you this week in your name. Amen. Amen. Thank you, guys.